city's master parks plan and give us an update on that. So, Matt, thank you very much.
Thanks. Thanks for having me here today. Of course, this plan, just to preface everything here, this plan has been in place for several years now, and it was passed by the previous council. So we have been operating under it for quite some time. And to preface even further, I'm going to come at this presentation from a planning perspective as opposed to a Parks and Rec operational perspective. That, in fact, would have been our Parks and Rec director. He just started, so I'm going to put a little bit of operational information into this presentation. But when I was thinking about what I was going to say yesterday on the way home from a summit in Flin Flon, I figured that we may as well tackle some of the main objectives from a planning perspective that this Master Parks Plan seeks to implement over the long term. Before I go any further, however, though, I just need to recognize and do the formalities of who's in the room from the City of Thompson. So we have a couple councillors here. Councillor Judy Collada, the chair of the Development Review Committee. Councillor Colleen Smook. We have Councillor Dennis Foley, who is the chair of the Parks and Rec Committee. And we have Councillor Blake Ellis in the room. And any other former councillors I don't see. So that's what I'm going to come at this presentation for you today. In fact, we'll go over the vision, the goals and objectives. So those are really the operational pieces of the Master Parks Plan. And you'll see from the vision that that is really the overarching vision of the city. It hasn't changed. So this is the city's vision statement. The goals and objectives really narrow in on how we implement the Master Parks Plan, the key themes of the Master Parks Plan, the MPP, which you'll see, and those really delve into the planning principles that the Master Parks Plan seeks to implement over the long term for the city. And then we'll go into the planning framework and the rationale, and then we'll have time for some Q&A. And I'll try to rush through this because we're a little late here. So again, the MPP vision, it speaks to Thompson's vision. And this statement is really comprehensive in nature. It seeks to overarch how Thompson is a place where people can live with those opportunities for economical opportunity, for play, for pleasure, and what have you. But at the same time being integrated into a very multifaceted cultural area by its very virtue. I mean, this is an Indigenous land, so we always recognize that. And in this vision statement, the Master Parks Plan doesn't alter it whatsoever. So Thompson is a city of unlimited opportunities, right? We are progressive choices, we offer a family-friendly environment, we offer spaces and places to prosper, and at the same time, we're immersed in a very, very diverse culture. The goals of the Master Park Plan: identify that long-term vision for the development of parks and open spaces based on community input. Community input means that we are going to, in fact, have that long-term implementation plan for the Master Parks Plan. Integration of the Master Parks Plan with various different planning documents. And this is where I'll speak to the Sustainable Community Plan, the Development Plan, and our zoning bylaw. All of those with the Master Parks Plan equals the planning and community development philosophy that we implement in planning and community development. And we execute the implementation strategy. So those are the three main goals of the Master Parks Plan. So executing that implementation strategy is really a long-term plan. And we'll go over a few of those objectives and how that execution really takes place. So the objectives are really granular in nature. So review and build the city's parks and open spaces inventory. So that objective's underway right now, and actually it's really reassuring to listen to our new Parks and Rec director talk about how we need to really go through that inventory of our parks and open spaces. How can we improve upon those open spaces? We have some parks, and I think everyone in this room would agree, that are kind of under rough condition. So how do we build upon it? How do we prioritize it? And that's what the first point seeks to do. Up-to-date map-referenced inventory of spaces. Another operational thing that we really want to get in place in the city. And this will take some time because obviously, as we all are aware, we have limited funds. So we need to really prioritize, is this something that we want to go digital? Do we want to have that open data that I spoke about probably a year ago here? Is open data important for the city? So this would be something that we would seek to provide that map reference inventory of space. Analyze suitability of city lands for a range of recreational and open space uses. So that really goes back to that inventory. What is each space good for? So we need to really develop that inventory, and that's the long-range implementation plan of the Master Parks Plan. Consult with the public in the development of the Master Parks Plan. Continuous consultation, that's Planning 101. So really we need to, I believe, improve upon the consultation piece at the City of Thompson, and this plan seeks to do that. Develop the long-term vision and conceptual plan for parks and open space systems. How do we develop our parks in the future? That's a very key vision that I have in planning and community development, and I'll speak to what we're doing right now actually at the city level. In fact, it'll come forward to our next council meeting for development of a future green space that is a really smart, in a smart position geographically in the city to, over the long term, develop into a new natural park. Identify areas suitable for specific open space development projects and improvements. Where can we build new public spaces? The public space is where people come together. We need to prioritize that and really think of public spaces as places not that we want to go through, but where we want to come and gather. We need more of that in Thompson, and this MPP really speaks to that and reinforces it. Develop a strategy for designation of future park areas. Planning tools. Through the planning process, the last two are really important because we use planning tools such as zoning bylaw amendments, such as rezoning, such as development plan amendments. We use those tools, and we should use them more to develop future green spaces, to improve upon our public spaces that we already have in the city. And of course, outline the next steps in the city's parks and open spaces planning process. That's about strategic planning. That speaks to that strategic planning piece. And it's comforting to know now that we have a new director in place who can really work with me on providing that strategic planning piece in the near future. I spoke to you just 5 minutes ago about what we're doing currently at the city to improve upon and to add to our public space inventory. 2 development review committees ago, I brought forward a plan to rezone a particular parcel of land that has been subdivided into various single detached residential dwelling parcels. It's outlined in a more bold black line there. That's at the end of Char Bay. That land has been vacant for quite some time. As many of you may know, it's just an open field. It is almost like a bog or a swamp. Councillor Foley could have held his mud bogs there before he did just outside of town. So really, I took a look at this piece of land and I thought, well, really, I mean, it's not suitable for development. Certainly the soil has been sinking and subsiding as a result of climate change and various other elements that are changing underneath, such as the permafrost. So who would want to develop and live on this piece of land? So naturally, we could unsubdivide and rezone this parcel of land for PR, public reserve land. So this is something that's coming forward to council. As per the Planning Act, we have posted it for the 40 days, and that will be coming to the September 17th council. As new space in our inventory, it is strategically positioned in an area that kind of lacks park space. In a radius, you have a few parks, a school within 150, 200 meters, but you have predominantly younger families with young children in this area. There are pathways and laneways that lend to this park. There is an abrupt terminus of Char Bay with some single detached dwellings that hold those young families. So what better than to have a gathering space in a residential area? So this is coming forward again, but this is something that we can use in planning and development to really analyze our inventory. So that's just an example of what we are doing. And the themes. So I spoke to you about that previous rezoning and how there are pathways that lead to an open space, to parks. The linear systems is a major theme. Linear systems meaning pathways, green corridors, streets, and redevelopments of each. This is a major theme in the Master Parks Plan. And this is something that I analyze on a daily basis or when time permits me to. But we really look at this and take this into account with the redevelopment of our major capital projects. Linear systems means those multi-use pathways, those sidewalks, those streets that we need to redevelop and integrate with our greenery. So how can we improve on each? And I know there's been discussion of our our recent capital project that finished the first phase of Cree Road, which was last year, and that boulevard that's in there. But why would we want to sacrifice green space and make more concrete, which heat sinks, if we could have a boulevard with green space that actually captures that heat and provides a more comfortable climate for pedestrians, which ultimately we prioritize on Cree Road. We're building multi-use paths along to extend those pathways, and we're improving upon our sidewalks. And so parks, and the placement of parks and public spaces is really strategic in planning, because we want to ensure that people go there. It's designed properly so it's safe. It's visible to residents in their backyard, their front yard. So this is an important theme that I thought I should touch upon here. Type C in the Master Parks Plan: parks, gardens, civic spaces, the redevelopment of a central park network. We really don't have that here. That's tough. This is a tough one. So we can outline the existing, which is the dark green, and the proposed. So we have a few proposed, but this is a rather antiquated diagram. We don't have an up-to-date one. This is from 2012, 2013. So there are a few spaces in here that would be great to propose. But in addition to, we have a few that we could also analyze to repurpose into public spaces. But as you see, I did consult with the proposed spaces, and you can see there's a green spot where we are in fact rezoning into parks there. So this is something that is very useful, but we need to really improve upon our inventory right now. How do we develop a central park network? Well, we need to either improve upon the public spaces that we have by building out a park network, which really mimics the shape of the existing city development already. Or we really need to ask ourselves, do we prioritize parcels that are PR right now, park reserve, public reserve, do we prioritize these enough to maintain them? We have existing green spaces in our city inventory that I would argue we don't prioritize. I would also argue that a few of these public squares aren't in fact public squares. They have barriers in front of them which don't allow people really to access. They have fences surrounding them, which is really counterintuitive to the word public, right? We don't want to institutionalize a public square. Do we prioritize that? I don't think so. So we really need to prioritize over the long term with this MPP of how we build out and improve upon our network. Natural and semi-natural green space or water courses, type A. So we have, I would argue, an excellent public space which really integrates a water course. It's in McLean Park and it goes into the river. And you can see it there, which is existing. And we've prioritized that as a natural space. Really, we've prioritized it so that it integrates with that river, and it has a future development with our Yale Newman development. It has a future purpose to serve, to integrate as a PR zone with a new development that we're hopefully going to unravel in the next 5 years, which runs adjacent to the Burntwood, to the river, over near the Brandon area. So we have a really brilliantly designed, utilizing existing natural assets, park that we can use. And of course, we prioritize everything along the river, along the Millennium Trail as a natural green space. We do this well in Thompson because Thompson is right in the middle of the boreal forest. And I would argue the sustainable development of the boreal forest as a plan really integrates with this plan quite nicely. The sustainable asset management plan is another element of the MPP which we need to really unravel over the long term. We need to look at our parks and open spaces, and we really need to develop that inventory of where we can improve upon the purposes of each public space, and do we need more or do we need to eliminate? We need to develop that inventory, and this sustainable asset management element within the MPP speaks to that. We need time, we need the money to do the right things at the right time. Applied to parks and open spaces, it helps to spend the right money for the right things at the right time. And so we have a few pictures here of our current assets, and I would argue again, the state of a few of our assets that we need to improve upon. So one of the things that I'm looking at is putting forward something to develop that inventory of the entire city asset. Everything from trucks to sidewalks, and developing that inventory and really building upon that, making it easy to look at how do we make a decision on what to improve and when to improve it, and spend the money for the right thing at the right time. Because as we know, our curbs, our sidewalks, our streets, they're crumbling, and it's no fault of anyone's. I mean, it's a rather young city we have. So we just need to invest wisely, and which we are doing. But we need that inventory to just pinpoint what we need to do from every asset owned in the city. So the MPP speaks to that. This is something that we should do. And our planning frameworks. So we have a few of our plans that I operate under that equal the Master Parks Plan. We have the sustainable asset, the infrastructure plan, the sustainable community plan, our zoning bylaw, our development plan. They all have the same language, right? They all do. It's very simple to read, with the exception of the zoning bylaw, which is rather quite dry. But each one really speaks to planning and community development. So that's the planning framework and the overall framework that planning and community development operates under. And there's a synergy between the Parks and Rec department and the planning department. And I would argue every single department has a synergy with planning, but I'm a little biased in that regard. But each plan speaks to how we develop our parks in a sustainable way. Moving forward, we really need to, what we've learned from this is that we need to identify the areas, utilize planning tools, which we are currently doing, monitor our assets, which we are currently doing on a yearly basis. We put forward capital projects which need improvement and prioritization, so we monitor those assets. Develop that asset management plan. That is key right now moving forward. We need to look at where we're going in the next 2 years and how we'll move forward after 2 years. Because ultimately these plans, even the Master Parks Plan, speaks to an economic development purpose. It speaks to developing spaces where people are attracted to. They want to go there and stay there. And that has a domino effect on spending. That has a domino effect on, and you can look to cities around the world, small, large. Great public spaces equal successful places to establish commerce. They do. They just do. And so the plan speaks to that. And from a recreational operational perspective, improve our existing facilities. And by facilities, I mean our assets and our buildings. Improve upon those and work with planning on strategic planning moving forward. And that's all I have to say today. Thank you.
Any questions for Matt?
No questions, just a comment. The public is more than welcome to all committee meetings of Thompson. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock is a development review committee meeting. So, as I say, the public is welcome. Please attend if you wish. It's in
10 a.m. Council Chamber.
That's right.
It's quite an exhaustive agenda too, I think.
Any questions for Matt? Being done, thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
For your presentation, it's great. Very informative.